Welcome to SportsBeat KC, the Kansas City Stars daily sports podcast. It's Thursday, October 13th, and I'm Blair Kirchhoff. From the frying pan and into the fire for the Chiefs this week. After an escape victory over the Las Vegas Raiders, the Chiefs now face the rugged Buffalo Bills at Arrowhead. The Bills and Chiefs are the only AFC teams with 4-1 records, and they may be the NFL's top teams. On today's show, columnist Sam McDowell and beat writer Jesse Newell join me on our weekly SportsBeat Live broadcast to break down the game, with the outcome possibly determining home field advantage throughout the AFC playoffs. We get into it by asking why the Chiefs got off to such a horrible start last week and what lessons can be learned from that. We talk about the Josh Allen versus Patrick Mahomes matchup and what the Chiefs must do to upset the team that is favored to win. That's right, the Chiefs are an underdog this week. It's the first time in the Patrick Mahomes era that he is not favored to win at home. Okay, let's get started. Hey, good morning from sunny Kansas City. Actually feels like fall out there this morning. Welcome to SportsBeat Live. It's the Kansas City Stars weekly show talking Chiefs with the folks in the media who know the best and with you. Please send along your questions and comments and talk Chiefs with us. We've got Sam McDowell and Jesse Newell in the house. I believe we'll be joined by Vahe Gregorian here sometime soon. Herbie Teope has a conflict and will not be joining us today. So injuries will come from somebody other than Herbie. And Vahe, I misspoke. Vahe will not be joining us today either. So, just the three of us here.
This is going to be great.
Hey, there is plenty to discuss with the game that just occurred just a couple nights ago, the Monday night victory over the Raiders, and of course the monster matchup with the Buffalo Bills on Sunday, 3:25 kick on CBS. I'll tell you what, guys, I think a good place to start is Chiefs were a 7-point favorite last week. Maybe it got up to 7.5. I don't know what it was at kickoff. But why did that game turn out to be as close as it did? And what can the Chiefs learn from that game to take into a contest against a seemingly more difficult opponent in the Buffalo Bills? Sam, let's start with you.
Well, I think that the last 2 weeks now, we've heard about instances that have motivated the Chiefs, and particularly the Chiefs' offensive line, whether it was early in the week against Tampa Bay after coming off that Colts loss, in which Andy Reid challenged the offensive line, or whether it was in game against the Raiders where the Chiefs were losing the battle of physicality on both sides of the ball. And Patrick Mahomes challenged them after one play and said, we're going to win or lose this game based on you guys. And Patrick Mahomes' lingo was based on y'all. So I think that this team needs to get to a place where they don't need the quarterback to motivate them to play hard. And we've seen that the past couple of weeks. So when you ask why the game was so close, it's because of how poorly they started the game. I mean, they got down 17-0 purely because the Raiders were a more physical team than they were on both sides of the ball. And the Chiefs offensive line got destroyed. The Chiefs defensive line got destroyed for the first quarter and a half of that game.
And Jesse, I know you don't believe much in the idea of a trap game or those kind of betting thoughts or ideas. But the Chiefs are coming off a really stout victory at Tampa Bay with the Buffalo Bills. They're this decade big rival ahead. With the Raiders coming in, which had just gotten their first victory, I don't know. I can't help but think that falling behind 17-0, they got punched in the mouth in that game, and had to respond to it. You don't usually see that from Andy Reid coach or Patrick Mahomes led teams.
Yeah, I'm going to give some credit to the Raiders here. You know, they had a good offensive game plan. They brought in that sixth offensive lineman. They hit a big play downfield on the 4th and 1, which is part of that 17-0 lead that they got out to. And, you know, they played like a team that needed a win at 1-3 and wanted to show people something. And again, we can talk about motivation if you want to, but, you know, kind of just top off, Blair, you talked about why did the Chiefs not perform as well when they were favored by 7 or 7.5? And the answer might just be that the 7 and 7.5 was too much. You know, like the Raiders were pretty good in that game. And We can say the Chiefs, they did lose 5 or 6 points on that Chris Jones play. Those things happen from time to time. They happen from game to game. Bad calls are going to happen, but overwhelmingly, I just think the Chiefs, instead of a motivational thing, you're right. I mean, they got fired up after that Jerick McKinnon run and kind of started to play physical football after that, after Patrick Mahomes challenged the offensive line. But I do want to give the Raiders some credit because I thought they played really well. They had a good game plan going in. They were aggressive when they needed to be. They hit some deep shots down the field. They took advantage of some of the defensive deficiencies that the Chiefs had. And a lot of this, I don't want to just laser focus on the Chiefs. I do want to take a broader view and say, hey, this is probably a better Raiders team than the 1-4 record. And frankly, it might be a better Raiders team than we saw a season ago when they went 10-7 and sort of got lucky when they were outscored by their opponents. So this is maybe the one team in the AFC West that is better than we thought going into the season, but that 1-4 record isn't going to show it. And I think they gave a great performance on Monday night.
That offensive line thing is going to be interesting to see moving forward because I actually think the Raiders lucked into that game plan. I don't think it was their intention. Darren Waller went out of the game in the second quarter, and I think the intention was to use him in that manner. Instead, because they only dressed 2 tight ends, they have to use a sixth offensive lineman for most of the game. And it took the Chiefs a long while to adjust to that because basically they obviously had the advantage in the running game. The Chiefs did not add an extra defensive lineman. They did not add an extra linebacker. They just brought their safety into the box. Well, that means you only have one safety back, so you had single coverage on the outside. They took advantage of that. We saw the DPI calls in the second quarter because of that. We saw the long balls Jesse mentioned to Devontae Adams in the first quarter. So I wonder now moving forward, are other teams going to try and replicate this in a different manner? Maybe it is using an extra tight end, but the Chiefs defense showed something on film. Now, of course, the element of surprise is gone if another team does that. You would think the Chiefs are working on that at some point this week. They adjusted to it better in the second half. There were still some hiccups. But I just think that's really going to be an interesting storyline, this week against the Bills because Josh Allen can run the ball. You add an extra element to taking advantage of that formation this week.
Yeah, how about Josh Jacobs running for a career high? Was it 154 in that game? And he absolutely benefited with an extra offensive lineman for the Raiders. Every time that Carl Cheffers, whose name has already popped up in our feed here, every time he mentioned, I forgot the numbers involved, 77's an eligible receiver or something, but if you heard that on television, we certainly heard it at the stadium. That's how many times the Raiders went with the additional offensive lineman. And I think you're right, Sam, that Chiefs weren't prepared for it. I don't know how you could be because it wasn't the Raiders weren't prepared for it. It just a nice piece of fortune for the Raiders that helped them get to the lead that they got. So and the other factor, I believe, in the fact that the Chiefs didn't cover and the game was as close as it was. How many points did the Chiefs not get in the kicking game because of Harrison Butker again wasn't available, missed a field goal, and I never again will I just take for granted having a good kicker on the team. There are so many NFL teams that don't have a Justin Tucker, a Harrison Butker, the Raiders kicker, the Bengals kicker. What a weapon that is, and to be able to rely on your kicker the way that these teams do, Carlson for the Raiders, that is something that cannot be underestimated.
I think more than that, Blair, it's just the confidence in the kicker. Andy Reid twice now is basically just throwing that baby out with the bathwater, and that's after Matthew Wright. I mean, let's say this. We talk about Harrison Butker, Nick Lowry, Jan Stenerud, all these great kickers in Chiefs history. Who has the record for the longest field goal in Chiefs history right now? It's Matthew Wright last game. You know what I mean? And we were just talking about this on the radio show here at 8:10, but it's crazy to me. Like, it's one thing to not trust a college kicker, but Matthew Wright is a top 50 kicker in the world right now. I mean, the guy should be able to make an extra point. And so, listen, if the decision was just basically trust your offense, go out there, have them get up 9, I totally get it. I mean, if I were Andy Reid, I would way more often than not say, I'm trusting Patrick Mahomes, I'm throwing him out there. But that seemed to me more like the Colts game where I just do not trust this kicker as far as I can throw him. And we saw later he didn't trust his offense because they had, as Cody mentioned down there, he's exactly right. And Sam, I'm going to kick it to you because you wrote about it. He has 4th and 3 to win the game. Guys, the Chiefs on 3rd and 7+ this year have converted 52% of their third downs. On 4th and 3, you're not going for it to ice the game against the Raiders. So obviously there is this sort of complex right now with Andy Reid where if it's not Harrison Butker, he just doesn't trust you no matter how many 59-yard field goals you make in the first half. And that's sort of the point the Chiefs are at right now. So they'll be very happy to have Harrison Butker back, not just because he is a great kicker, top 5 kicker in the NFL, but mostly because he's going to get out of the coach's head right now. Because right now, him having any kicker other than Butker has completely changed what he thinks about his team and what decisions he makes.
Yeah, I think it also adds something to Butker because, I asked Dave Tobe this a couple of weeks ago. The nature of how Harrison Butker suffered that injury, you would think is going to be in his head as far as because it came when he planted. Like he did nothing wrong. It's not like he was involved in a tackle on a kickoff and he's just like, okay, I got to stay away. It's just he was planting to make a kick, and he does that on every kick in a different manner, of course, on kickoffs and field goals. But I still think that could potentially be a mental battle that Harrison Butker is just going to have to get through in a game situation before he feels totally comfortable with that. And so as much as I totally agree with Jesse, Andy Reid is going to get to a spot at some point this season where he's like, okay, we've got Harrison Butker and Harrison Butker is back. But I just think it might take a couple of weeks before we see that Harrison Butker mentally is in that space too.
That's interesting because I think of the great kickers like the ones I mentioned earlier are the ones that are also the most mentally strong too. That there's how many big kicks has Harrison Butker made for the Chiefs over the years. So you just think back to the Bills playoff game last year and the Patriots playoff game in 18. And, he has not missed in one of those situations. So that'll be interesting to keep an eye on if he comes up in a big spot, which in a game like this, I don't know if you can count on it, but you can see it happening.
You're right, Blair. And also, if you watched, if you remember last year when we asked Harrison Butker about that Bills kick, he acknowledged he was nervous. He's like, I'm not going to lie to you guys. Yeah, at some point you think, if I miss this kick, we lose the game. And for those people that watch all the Sunday slate of games, it was pretty interesting hearing on Sunday night Justin Tucker after he made that game-winning field goal. He acknowledged that he feels the nerves of a kick too. So these guys are human as much as the best kickers in the world, and Justin Tucker is literally the best I think we've ever seen. It seems like they can be robots at some point because they're so automatic, but that definitely plays a factor in it. And I should have mentioned that when I did ask Dave Tobe about that, his answer was yes. That is going to be part of Harrison Butker's recovery, is getting over the mental hurdle of it.
Real quick, guys, Harrison Butker was out at practice yesterday, so at least is a promising sign. Potentially he'll be able to go this week. I just wanted to throw this to you guys real quick. What do you think the odds were that Matthew Wright could make that extra point against the Raiders? And what do you think Andy Reid thought the odds were that he would make the extra point against the Raiders? Because I think those two numbers are way different. You know what I mean? What do you guys think? What are the odds after missing a field goal? What are the odds he makes that extra point if he decides to kick there?
Well, much lower in Andy Reid's estimation than Matthew Wright's. That's for certain. What's funny about this is a week earlier, Matthew Wright had a nice game, right? For the Chiefs down in Tampa Bay.
Matthew Amendola had a nice game too. Yeah.
Right. Before he did what he did against Indianapolis, and then of course we saw what happened last week kicking for the Cardinals. So, bit of a crapshoot there with non-proven NFL kickers. I wanted to bring this up too. We're kind of bounce around because there's so many topics, especially with the Bills coming up. But I don't want to spend much time on roughing the passer. It's played out. It's the national conversation for a couple of days. But what I wanted to ask you about was, did you notice where Chris Jones had lined up when he got that sack? He was at a defensive end, and I'm wondering how many times you've seen that from him this year. And I don't have stats in front of me, or I don't. But he was lined up on the outside, and I just don't remember seeing that much this season. Is there any place to look at snap counts?
I'm looking up real quick here. It is something the Chiefs have done to try to get him the best matchups, and you look at Pro Football Focus so far this year, Chris Jones has been the highest graded defensive player in all of the NFL so far. So he's been productive, not only on the inside, but also when they have shifted him to the outside. So that has been something they play with this year. I can get the exact numbers here real quickly, but obviously last year when they started him on the edge and then realized that was a bad mistake, they moved him back inside. He might primarily play inside, and he's a wreck inside. Honestly, you'd prefer to have a great interior rusher because, I mean, just think about the lines that you make. Like getting to the quarterback is quicker when you're on the inside. So that's a good thing for the Chiefs. But again, if he has an ability to pick on a particular guard or tackle on the outside, and the Chiefs see that before the game, it seems like that's kind of how they've been using him. So I can pull up these numbers real quick, but it has been something that's happened in previous weeks, and kind of depending on a game situation, how he can be able to impact in a different way.
I just think it may come with, you have more steps to take. Like you said, Jesse, there's a distance factor here, more steps to take. May have been why the sack came with more force maybe than might be expected from somebody who's lining up in the middle and getting to the quarterback from more of a straight on angle than what Jones did. Anyway, listen, it's neither here nor there, but to me, the sidebar of the sack controversy was Chris Jones lining up on the outside and coming in from that angle. So so many angles on storylines with the Bills coming up. One of them is how are the Chiefs going to defend a team that has wide receivers, multiple wide receivers as good as the Bills have, with Stephon Diggs and Gabriel Davis, who's I think still running into the end zone at Arrowhead Stadium. It's unbelievable. And as Cody mentions, do we expect Trent McDuffie to be back, and can he make a difference in this game?
So McDuffie is a little bit of a tougher case to gauge because he's still technically on IR. He was on the practice field yesterday, but since he's on IR, we don't get a designation to how big of a workload Trent McDuffie had yesterday. So, that activation, if it happens, would probably come on Saturday even. It could be that late in the week before we know whether or not Trent McDuffie is ready to roll. He is back at practice, which means he'll be back within the next 3 weeks for sure. Unless, of course, that's barring a setback of some sort.
And should the Chiefs be worried that Derek Carr went over the top twice to Devontae Adams, and both times L'Jarius Sneed was not on Devontae Adams. When Sneed was on Adams, they didn't go Adams' way, but in those two instances where they went over the top, they picked on, I think, was it Fenton the first time, and Brian Cook was the closest player to Devontae Adams for the second touchdown, the one in the fourth quarter. And to see what Josh Allen did against the Steelers going over the top, and what he's been doing all year, really, how big a concern should this be for the Chiefs?
So I would say yes, but I would say every team should have this concern when they play the Bills, just like every team has this concern when they play Patrick Mahomes, and that's why you see the defenses you see. Steve Spagnuolo is usually more reluctant to just throw all cover two at a quarterback the whole game. The way that, I mentioned everybody should be concerned about Patrick Mahomes in this situation. Well, they account for that. They play a ton of cover two, although we've seen a little bit less this year. But I thought going into the year that Rashad Fenton on the outside might be a little bit of an issue because speed is not his strength. And look, I'll excuse the 4th and 1 because I think you got a chance to end a drive there, and selling out to try and stop the run is not that bad. And that's what the Chiefs did. And they had single coverage up top. And Devontae Adams is one of the very best wide receivers in the world. He's a little bit difficult to defend in single coverage. So I don't really mind that call, and I'm not too concerned about that. But that was not Rashad Fenton's only mistake in that game. I mean, he had a tough day. Rashad Fenton's also injured. He didn't practice yesterday. So I think they really need Trent McDuffie back because, that's why you drafted him first, with your first pick, is you had a need at cornerback, and, that need has not disappeared.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, Sam, because you're absolutely right. The Raiders got the Chiefs on scheme on that 4th and 1. Like, they had the right play call. They got the one-on-one for Devontae Adams. They decided to throw it deep, which is a risky proposition to start with, and they hit it. That's not Rashad Pence's fault. No cornerback in the NFL should get no safety help and be able to cover him in space. The one you talked about earlier, Blair, I mean, if I'm just being honest, Brian Cook needs to be further back. I mean, that was a play where you have two deep safeties. Nobody should run by you. And actually, if you look and watch closer at that play, the Raiders had mirrored routes. So I think it was Thornhill at the top, and you see Thornhill and Cook gets beat by Adams, and the top is actually covered because Thornhill is doing what he's supposed to do and being further than the deepest. And so, again, that you marked some of that up to inexperience, to rookie play, to those guys getting in there. But I do think it's worth noting Fenton did not play as badly as that one play indicated. But to Sam's point, I think they could use more depth. And the reason they took Terry McDuffie in the first round is you sort of figured that side is going to be taken care of. You know, you're going to have a guy who you can rely upon and have a pretty high floor in these particular games. What makes it tough for the Bills, as Sam said, which is like, if you want to, it's like the Raiders last week. Like they want to take away Kelsey. So what do you give up? Okay, well, you know, all of a sudden Juju Smith-Schuster catches a pass, and Marquez Valdes-Scantling catches a pass, and McCole Hardman goes deep. All those guys have single coverage. Like if you are the Chiefs and you just put everybody in coverage, well, all of a sudden you've got Josh Allen barreling at you, and you got the Bills throwing in their fullback, and they go to a power run game. So this is what makes these two offenses so difficult, is that when you try to stop one thing, when you try to game plan and scheme something up, they've got a counterpunch they can go to that's just as effective. And I can tell you right now, the Chiefs definitely are worried about the Josh Allen run game, because he's shown that in the past, ability to make plays with his feet and be able to turn, same way that Mahomes does, turn some gains that shouldn't be there into gains. And even when you scheme this thing up pretty well, he's still able to make plays and move the football down the field.
The interesting thing, Blair, is that week to week, you could go back and forth on L'Jarius Sneed's position on the field. You know, I think for the longest time, I thought that L'Jarius Sneed should be an outside cornerback. And the way he played in the initial month of the season was like, I get it. He's a game changer on the inside because he blitzes far better than anybody else on the team does from that spot. Even their linebackers, he blitzes better than the linebackers do from that spot. Just the way he disguises it. Jesse broke down a play in Tampa that illustrated that. But, you know, I think you could go back Monday night and said, man, you got to put that guy on your outside. He's your best cornerback, and they had a top receiver, and, man, you need – and this week could be the same thing. You mentioned Gabriel Davis, which is the name everyone's going to remember, but Stephon Diggs is one of the best receivers in the game, one of the best route runners in the game. Again, this week you might be saying, man, you got to put L'Jarius Sneed out there, unless, you know, Gabriel Davis could potentially be in the slot. So it's an interesting proposition that I'm sure the Chiefs have asked themselves several times before landing on the fact that they think Sneed's best position is in the slot.
Well, here's the problem, Sam, is that when he is in the slot, like everybody's looking at him now, like, is this guy rushing? Hey, watch that guy. You know, like he screws with an offense. You know what I mean? Like everybody now is worried about L'Jarius Sneed. And then if he goes in coverage, they're like, oh, okay. You know, and so this is kind of a give and take. But I mean, the bottom line with this is what you said, like, Chris Jones, number 1, has been the Chiefs' best defensive player. L'Jarius Sneed, number 2, has been the Chiefs' second best defense player to me. Now, you can make a case for Nick Bolton. I think he struggled a little bit in some pass coverage type of stuff, but he's been a sure tackler and obviously been a great add-on to get in that lineup and replace, you know, the guy that he did in Hitchens. But I think he's been their second best player. And to be able to create, I mean, we kind of overlooked this one, to be able to create another fumble last week with that hit he had. I know it goes out of bounds, but he can't control that. I mean, he's creating turnover-worthy plays almost every single week. So it's a credit to him. He's been one of the Chiefs' best players this year, and he's definitely somebody that offenses are worried about.
Yeah, Jeremy says Bill's offensive line banged up. Pressure on Allen could be the game changer. I think this is going to be kind of a keep your eyes on Nick Bolton game, because I think he's going to be responsible for Allen when he looks to escape the pocket, and that'll be Bolton's responsibility. And I think the Chiefs are in a better position this year than at any other time in the past 2 seasons when they played the Bills, because it's not going to be Anthony Hitchens doing it. It's going to be Nick Bolton. So a little fun fact, I looked this up earlier this week. Everybody respects Josh Allen as his ability to run. The 2 most productive running games for Patrick Mahomes in his career were the 2 games against the Bills last season. He had 69, I think, in the playoff game, and 61 in the regular season game. I might have those reversed. But those are the 2 best rushing games by Patrick Mahomes. And not all of that is is being flushed and running. Some of it is, but not all of it. There were some designed runs for Mahomes here. The Bills don't blitz. They have the second lowest blitz percentage in the NFL. So I think this is one of those games where when you see the end zone camera on a replay and you see linebackers turned and DBs turned and Mahomes sees that, that's when he takes off and runs. And that is an effective play for the Chiefs.
Yeah, as good as Josh Allen and the Bills' offense is, their defense has actually statistically been better than the offense. And that's not just, the straight out numbers. I mean, the DVOA on Football Outsiders has them better. Now, the Bills haven't played a particularly grueling schedule to open this year. Patrick Mahomes will certainly be their toughest test. But you mentioned the blitz percentage, Blair. I could see the Bills exhausting a full game without a blitz on Sunday. I think it's one of the few games where Patrick Mahomes knows what coverages he's going to see. The variance that the Bills have is they really play the robber coverage very well. And heck, Jesse illustrated a robber coverage that the Chiefs saw on Monday against the Raiders. But basically, they use their safeties interchangeably. And that's what seems to fool the Chiefs sometimes. And that's what got them in that first matchup against the Bills last year.
Can I real quickly, when we're talking about safeties, just something to keep in mind as well. What's so interesting about this matchup is I think both these teams, and maybe Sam, you can give a nod or a shake. I think both these teams, just in the very back of their mind, when they're getting personnel in the offseason or drafting, they're thinking about the other. If you're the Bills, especially, and you lost to the Chiefs, you're thinking about how can we beat the Chiefs? Who can we bring in to make sure that we can match up with this team as well as we can? On the Chiefs side of this, let's look to Justin Reed, because we talked about how good Josh Allen has been in the running game, even against the Chiefs. He has been a downhill safety who has helped them in the run game and played with physicality. So having him on the roster and signing him in the offseason and targeting him, I think part of the reason for that, you look at it and you say, okay, this guy can help when there's mobile quarterbacks like Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen. You can keep your nickel defense in there. You don't have to, you can kind of have the safeties back there who are versatile, but yet you have some run support there and a guy who can come up and hit and make the quarterback think about something. So also watch for Justin Reed in this game, because he's been good so far for the Chiefs this year, but I think specifically he likely was brought in this offseason with the Chiefs just in the back of their mind thinking when they face Josh Allen, he's a guy that potentially can help them in this particular game because he can get downhill, he can make some fits in the run game, he can make sure that those quarterbacks don't tear up the Chiefs like they have in the past.
Hey, look, I think the Chiefs draft was shaped in part by the games against the Bills and the Bengals last year. They have 10 draft picks, and was 5 of them were defensive backs, corners, and safeties. They were going to remake that secondary, and I think with the results to Jamar Chase and the Bengals and Josh Allen and the Bills, that's what the Chiefs looked at going into the offseason. So. All right, so how does this, we talk about motivation. We haven't spent a moment talking about 13 seconds or the way the Chiefs won in the playoff. I know that's obviously a topic in Buffalo this week and should be, right? If the Chiefs had lost that way, we talk about it a lot. But the Chiefs turning around and losing the next week in the AFC title game sort of tempers the 13-second game in Kansas City. How about the fact that the Chiefs are an underdog at home for the first time with Mahomes as a starter. They've been underdogs at home with Mahomes wasn't a starter. The Packers and Vikings games come to mind the year that Mahomes was out with an injury. But and then Mahomes' record as an underdog, no matter where the game is played. Do players get motivated by things like that? Do we think? I mean, because we have to say what we think because they won't tell us. They just won't say we don't look at that stuff. And but what do we think about that, Jesse? Why don't you or Sam? You take that.
Yeah, Patrick Mahomes. The answer is a definitive yes. I mean, I guarantee,
like I said, the players don't mention it.
I guarantee you, he's pissed off that he's an underdog on Sunday. It's like you mentioned. But by the way, that line is growing in the Bills' favor. I mean, it opened at 1, I think, and last I saw, there's some websites that have it up to 3. It's 2.5 or 3. So, yeah, there's no doubt that Patrick Mahomes is looking at stuff like that. I mean, he's a guy that looks at every slight, intentional or unintentional slight as that sort of motivation. And heck, I mentioned it earlier. This team for some reason has needed to find motivation. I would think that only getting 17 of these games a year would be enough. And man, just playing these guys, I mean, it's not lost on these guys that this could potentially decide where the AFC Championship game is played this year.
Yeah, I agree with Sam. Real quick, to get back to Chris Jones' discussion, Pro Football Focus has him lined up 191 snaps in the middle, 64 over tackle, and 15 outside tackle. So that's obviously lower than numbers last year because he started as an edge rusher, right. But they are mixing that sort of thing in there with Chris Jones. But I agree with Sam. I mean, I think the line is right. Like I was always arguing this in college basketball, but one mark of a good team is that you just kick the crap out of other teams. And that's what the Bills have done a lot this year. So they have dominated opponents in a way that no other team in the NFL has. Now, I think the Chiefs are the second best team in the NFL right now, but I think the Bills are number one and on a tier of their own. So the line doesn't surprise me, but to Sam's point, I mean, we saw the pissed off Mahomes against Tampa Bay. We saw motivated Andy Reid pull out all the crazy plays against Tampa Bay and be prepared. So that's sort of the thing always in the back of my mind here is how will this play out? Because the Chiefs are at home, they have the Arrowhead crowd, and we have seen a different team when they come out and have that different juice in those games against Arizona and the Bucks and these other games that they played. So what will we see? I think hopefully just a great game because these two teams, I think the best in the NFL might still be the NFL game of the season, even including the playoffs because these teams aren't guaranteed to meet in the playoffs. But to me, this is the heavyweight fight right here. This is the one that you've been waiting for all year, and hopefully it delivers and meets those expectations.
Yeah, with Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes facing off for the first of what we think will be two meetings, but this will be the third year. I thought in 2020 the Chiefs were clearly the better team. I thought last season the Bills were slightly a better team and just got lost a coin toss right in the playoffs. And then this year is the first opportunity to prove where these two teams stand. But I agree, Jesse. These are the two best teams in the NFL. All right, guys, great conversation. Had to pull the show without Vahe and Herbie. They'll be back on Sunday afterwards. That's the next time we'll see you guys, Sunday after the Chiefs-Bills game. Join us then. That'll do it for today. Thanks to our SportsBeat KC production staff of Monty Davis, Randy Mason, George Howard, and Jeff Rosen. Tip of the cap to Jesse Newell and Sam McDowell for sharing their insights on the Chiefs. Morning Sports Edition was 48 pages today, full of baseball playoffs, NFL coverage, college football, golf, auto racing, soccer, you name it, it was there. Check it out at liveedition.kansascity.com. Thanks for listening, and we'll be back soon with another SportsBeat KC.